And we're live on YouTube as well. But we're just going to wait for a couple more minutes before actually starting.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah, seems to work.
Nice. Maybe let's wait until 5 past.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can you post the Q&A link also in the YouTube chat?
It should be there already, but we can put it again.
Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I think it's already there.
All right, so for everybody who just joined, we're waiting until 5 after, in case you're wondering why nobody's speaking.
You should probably really figure out how to make music here.
Yeah.
So awkward.
Did you just put music, Andy?
Yep. Copyright-free music.
Awesome. Okay, but it's 5 after, so I think we can start as well. All right. So welcome, everybody. So first of all, this event is again live streamed to YouTube. So for those of you in the Google Meets, little disclaimer, if you do not want to appear in the stream, then you should disable your camera. And then for today's event, we have 4 current Google interns with us who are going to tell us about what the internship is really like and give you also some tips on the application. And then in the second part of the event, they will have time for you to answer all your questions. And to ask your questions, we've put a link into the Meet description and also in the YouTube chat, and I think also in the YouTube description, where you can submit your questions already now. And then everybody can upvote the questions, and the most relevant questions are going to be answered first. And I think that's all from me. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Vivi for the event.
Yes, thank you, Flo. So I'm Vivi. Hi. Welcome, everyone who came to our Internships at Google panel. Really happy to see this many people here and on the live stream. Maybe we can start with a quick disclaimer. We're not sponsored by Google for this, nor are we Google officials. We're just for interns who want to share their experience. So please always double check with your recruiters. Yeah, just to make sure. Yeah, so welcome to our 4 interns. Well, 3 of the others, I mean. We have Jonathan here, who has been working in Chromium this year. We have Flores, who is an SRE intern, so site reliability engineering. Lucas, who has been working in the security team, and myself working in Lens. Hi. Yeah, so I'm going to start with general why an internship. So for those of you who don't know, an internship is basically an opportunity for students to work at a company or an institution for a few weeks or for a few months, typically full-time, but some are also part-time. And yeah, why should you do an internship generally? First of all, it's a really great experience. It's really cool to actually put your hands on a project that's going to be launched to some users maybe, or to the company, because typically in university, if you have projects, most of them typically are done to get a grade and not to get launched or to be useful in some way. Depends on the projects, of course. Yeah, and secondly, it's also really cool to find out what it is really like to work in a certain company. So if you've always been thinking about joining a certain company later after your studies to work there, an internship is a really, really great way to see if that's actually what you want to do later, or if you actually fit into the company. But also on the other side, it's great for the company to see if you fit the company. Which is also the third point, connections. So during an internship, you will meet a lot of people. We will get into this in the next slide. But it's really cool to see this many people in the company, so they can see if you fit, which is really helpful later if you do want to work there. But even if you decide to go to another company, it's really cool to have people that can refer you to give like recommendations even for other companies. And then lastly, an internship is also really cool to have on your CV, so that people who are thinking about employing you can see that you have some working experience already. And most importantly, of course, an internship is a lot of fun. So you should definitely try it if you have the chance. So for interning at Google specifically, we have gathered some quick facts. So first of all, what kind of internships can you do? There's many different internships that you can do. We will focus on the computer science internships because that's what we did. But we'll get into the others quickly afterwards. So for computer science students, we have 3 different kinds of internships. The first one is for, let's say, beginner students. So first or second years of bachelor's. It's called the STEP internship. I think it's short for Student Trainee Engineering Program or something. And these internships are typically 12 weeks long. They're in the summer, and they're a bit different from what we did. So when they were still in person, you would get paired up with another STEP intern or 2, depending, and you have 2 hosts, and you have projects that are typically scaled down a little bit so that you, as a beginner student, don't have too much difficulty doing that. And you have a lot of guidance if you are stuck anywhere. Then from second year bachelor's onwards to master's, you can do the SWE or SRE internship. So SWE is short for software engineering, and SRE is short for site reliability engineering. In reality, if you're a full-timer, it does make a small difference if you're a SWE or SRE, because SWEs typically make products that face the clients or that face the users, while SREs want to make sure that the products are running smoothly and they're more focused on like internal productivity products. However, for an internship, it really doesn't make too much of a difference, at least in my experience, not, because in both cases you will be programming on some kind of project. I'm sure Flores will also be able to answer any SRE related questions later on. Yeah. For the master's until PhD, you can also do a research internship. As the name already says, you're going to be placed in the research team instead of some programming team, and you will help them research some topic, maybe help them write a paper, maybe if you're lucky also present it at some conference. Although neither of us have done that yet, so yeah, I guess you'll have to try it yourself. Then also, if you're not in computer science, there's other internships, as I said. If you're into business, you can do business internships where you work with clients and help them with Google services and help them make their business more, or make our service, Google services more helpful to them. You can do UX or UI internships, so user-sided designing, for example, or you can do UX research internships where you will do some surveys with real users and design something. You can do hardware internships or IT internships. You can do product management internships, which is really cool if you are somewhere in tech, but also really good with people and really good with organizing. This is a really cool opportunity as well. And I'm sure there's also other types of internships which you can just look up in the internet. Yeah, and then what a typical SWE or SRE internship looks like. Typically they're around 13 weeks long, or I think the minimum is 13 weeks, and then you can also make it longer if you want to. Typically, what I've heard is most interns do between 3 and 6 months. And the timing is also quite flexible, so you can basically say whenever you want to start. However, the peak time is definitely the summer, so most interns come during the summer. And I would also recommend doing it if you can, because you will meet so many cool people, and most of the cool intern events are also happening in the summer. So if you can, join in the summer. And then what it typically looks like timeline-wise is you'll start with a few days or weeks probably with onboarding, which means that you will get used to the code base and your project and what you have to do. And this is really long in comparison to other companies, because Google's code base is really, really, really big and quite complicated sometimes. So you're expected to have some time to onboard. Then you have around 1.5 or 2 months, or maybe more, depending on how long you are there, to actually work on your project. And the end is typically also reserved to finish up your documentation, hand over your project to your host or your team. And then also you have an internship final presentation to your team, where you will present what you have done to other people as well. And then for the person or the people you will get to know, you have one personal recruiter. This is the person who is going to be in touch with you first, before the internship, during the internship, but also afterwards. And he or she is going to guide you through the whole process of being an intern, and is also your contact person if you have any questions whatsoever. You have one host, who is the person in the team, a full-timer, who is responsible for guiding you through your project, also writing your review at the end, but I think Lucas is going to talk about reviews later on. You also have a co-host, typically, who is another person in the team or someone else who has some insights into what you have done, who is also able to give some kind of opinion about your performance. And then, yes, other people. You have a buddy if you want to, who is someone else in your team that you can talk to if you want. You have a mentor, which can be anyone at Google if you're interested to learn about other teams. And then you have hundreds of other interns in the summer that you are going to meet and do things with. And literally anyone at Google is really, really friendly. I mean, even managers, if you're interested in some specific team or topic or person, you can just write them, and they're typically really happy to schedule a meeting with you or meet in person if that's allowed, and talk about anything. So yeah, my point here is that doing an internship at Google might sound quite intimidating, but actually it's not as intimidating as you think, because there's a lot of people that will help you out if you do see any problems. And then lastly, for the locations, well, of course, this year it was virtual, which was kind of sad, but in person there are many different offices. This is just the ones in EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa, that you can choose from. But of course, you can also apply to America. You can apply to the Asian regions. Yeah, which is also a really cool aspect of doing an internship at Google, because you're also having this experience to move somewhere else if you want to. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Loris, I think.
Yes. So yeah, like Vivi already described, the actual working part is of course like the main event or main part of your internship. However, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie The Internship. There's actually a lot more around a Google internship than just the work. You actually kind of have to really focus on the work, because you think that Google actually doesn't really want you to work because there's so much other stuff to do. For example, here we already see like there's music and playrooms that you can use most of the time depending on whether people are actually working. There's nap rooms in case you're tired. You can use any time basically, as well as, for example, massage chairs, which I personally don't like that much, but I hear people really enjoy them. Okay, then yeah. So for me personally, the main event is food, because you get free breakfast, lunch, and I think all in other interns will agree, free breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day except on weekends. And there's like in all offices there's baristas, and yeah, there's like a general rule that when you start at Google, you're probably gonna gain some weight. And I've actually seen this with friends that actually indeed got like small bellies after working at Google for a while. Yeah, so except for food, of course, like it says on the slide as well, there's like e-bikes and g-scooters to get around that you can just take out and ride somewhere. You usually have to bring them back, but it's really convenient, and like it really improves your quality of life immensely. So even around work, it's just all around really cool. And then there's gym classes and massages, which you have to book in advance, because don't forget to book your massages. I did that and I regretted it immensely. So yeah, don't forget your massages, guys, if you join. Okay, then there's one main event every Friday, usually. It's called TGIF. There's like the big TGIF that's in America, where there's like Sergey who talking about whatever happened, and like it's a huge event and it's live streamed to all other locations, and people come together and watch, which is a lot of fun. And there's also like the bit more local, smaller TGIF, which is just for your office specifically, where there's usually like food and drinks, and well, it's every Friday, and you talk to lots of people. So you can talk basically to anyone, because most people attend, and it's a fun place to get to know your colleagues on a bit more personal level. Although it can get quite geeky as well, because yeah, if you're Swede, you're still around with of other Swedes. One fun fact, technically, the TGIF, like the big one, is usually on Thursdays, because they found out that like with the time difference, it was just easier to do it on Thursday for reasons. Okay. Then as a Google intern, you'll also get quite around. So there's, for example, team offsites, which you might have, you might not, depends on your team. Where just your entire team will go to a different office or different place and just be there for a while, just enjoy yourselves and yeah, do whatever. And as an intern, you are usually guaranteed a trip to Zurich, unless you're already in Zurich, then you'll just stay in Zurich, to the Intern Summit, which is like all interns from EMEA coming together to participate in like talks and activities. And there's usually like one big cruise, or rather party cruise at the end over the Zürich See, which is a lot of fun, as the other interns can also attest. Yeah. And then there's some more surprises, technically. So there's a huge intern community with which you can share, and you will make a lot of friends. It's honestly one of the greatest times of my life, and I've met many friends that I still benefit from. Like, this is my second internship, so last year I also did an internship, and I still have many friends remaining, which is, yeah, a lot of fun. Making memes is also a very big part. of culture. I was very proud when I had my first +100 upvote meme, because I usually make terrible memes, so this was really an exception. And yeah, whenever there's a huge TGIF or anything is announced, there's usually, you can track everything on meme gen. As the story develops, people will make a lot of memes, and they make really good memes. And again, it's a huge time sink. So you're not really, you are kind of free to do whatever you want, but there's not like you won't necessarily be micromanaged by your manager. And you also have like almost complete free access to the entire code base. So you can, within Google, you can look at whatever you want almost, and do whatever you want almost. So it's just it's a really fun time, and you will learn a lot, and you'll have to manage your own time, and yeah, it's just a great time for experiencing new things, which kind of ties into this one. Like you can, yeah, you can look at the entire code base, ask anyone any question. If you're allowed to know it, they'll tell you. And there are some things, of course, you as an intern are not allowed to know, and they might even know it. But yeah, in general, it's you'll just, yeah, the entire culture is open to you. Google considers itself a blame-free environment, which means that whenever you make a mistake, yes, of course, fix it, or someone will have to fix it. But there's like no direct bad consequences for you, because making mistakes is normal and part of the process. Especially if you're an intern, you're just learning. There's also another saying that you're not a real SRE, or not a real Google SRE, so site reliability engineer, until you've broken production at least once. So making mistakes is part of the process, and they're usually very forgiving. Yeah, a lot of fun stories that you'll hear once you join Google.
Okay, thanks, Floris. As you might have heard, this year, Google moved the entire internship program to a virtual program. So all interns are remote, or were remote. And this meant for many people, including me, that we had to switch projects, because all the first-time interns only worked in open source projects. And we weren't allowed to look at the internal code base and other internal tools. And also some other interns who would have went to the US, for example, or other countries with time zones that weren't manageable, also moved to different projects in EMEA. We got a laptop and a monitor shipped for a work setup, and then we were good to go. Unfortunately, we didn't get any food, but I guess that's how it is. But maybe next time when we're in the office, we get some. Then obviously the whole social aspect of the internship is gone, or at least different. So they did provide some other social. They organized some Google Meets to meet up with other interns. So we either just like talked about stuff, or we played some games. There were different kind of setups. We also had the option to take cooking classes or other remote courses. There were also fitness instructors. We could do some fitness courses, like some workouts, or via Google Meet as well. And you could even schedule one-on-ones with them and go through some workout stuff. And like they have a whole internal platform where you can basically take courses on soft skills, hard skills, whatever you want, which is pretty cool. And they also had a lot of talks. So a lot of leadership, like executives, took some time to just like prepare some slides and present something about how they work at Google and how they got there. And you could ask some questions to them. And for me, I was in Chrome, and the Chrome executives also organized some coffee chats where you could basically, I think there were like 3 to 10 interns together with one of the executives, and you could talk to them private, which was pretty cool. Yeah. So I worked in Chrome, so I can get, and since it's open source, I can give some more insights on the work. I won't discuss my exact feature because it's not too highly relevant, but if you want, you can check. It's open source. So Chrome is a really, really big project. Not as big as Google's internal code base, which is significantly larger, but it's still a lot. If you check it out locally, it's like 35 gigabytes. With all the build artifacts, you get up to 100 gigabytes. And it's I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's somewhere around 25 to 30 million lines of code. And getting used to the code base it takes some time. And they have a really cool tool, which is called Code Search. And their Chrome version is open source. So if you want to try it out, it's source.chromium.org. And you can basically navigate the code base in a really cool fashion. So you can basically click on all the variables and the methods and whatever, and it basically resolves. You can basically see the entire call hierarchy. Like every time this method is called, you can see the call hierarchy, which is really amazing if you want to explore the code base. Then something that is also different is the version control, or at least for many people, I guess. I was used to feature branches. So whenever I build a feature, I simply create a branch on Git and put my changes in there. It's different for Google in general. They use CLs, and they're basically a small branch, basically. So you split your feature basically in smaller CLs, smaller code parts, and then you merge it directly into master, which has a benefit, first of all, that the reviews are easier because you only have to review small parts. And second of all, it lowers the probability of merge conflicts. So imagine you would work on a feature branch for like 1 month or like 2 months. And then on a deadline, like 30 to 40 teams merge their code on master. It will have a lot of merge conflict and it doesn't work. So that's why they're using a slightly different system. But you can also check it out, chromiumreview.googlesource.com, also completely open source. You can check out basically all CLs. And if you want to check out more, you can check out chromium.org, or there's also a Chrome University playlist on YouTube where they introduce some more stuff about Chrome. And now I think it's Lucas' turn.
Yes, hello. Now that you've gotten some nice overview of what an internship would be like, hopefully you're wondering, how do I become an intern? And let's go through the steps. It's, as you can see, has quite a few components to it. But the very most important one, I would say, is step number 1, which is apply on the portal, fill out all the information, upload your CV and all of this. And this is really the hardest part. It may look like the simplest one, but it's actually the one where most people are already filtered out. So really put some effort into your CV. Make sure it's a high quality CV, like limited to 1 page, highlight important projects you've made, and if possible, include numbers and all these best practices. There's also some tips on the site that is linked in the slides. So really don't underestimate this step, because Google has so many applications and so many people are just filtered out at this stage before even getting the chance to demonstrate any of their skills. And if you've made it through that part, congratulations, you're now ready for your technical interviews. As an intern, you get 2 of them. They're both 45 minutes long over GBC. And basically, you're going to get some coding challenges there, usually some simple warm-up problem and then some extension of it to make it a bit more challenging, and usually revolves around algorithms and data structures. So make sure you know your runtime complexities and make sure you are able to explain what you are doing. So basically, the worst thing you can do in an interview is just kind of write your code silently for 15 minutes and in the end find out that it's actually the complete wrong approach because you didn't explain what you're doing. So these interviews are also quite important. Basically, based on this feedback, you will either be put into the next stage or also be rejected. And after the stage, you're pretty much set. So once you've passed the interviews, you are now in the official like intern queue, and you will get a questionnaire that you have to fill out, and by providing your locations and your time preferences, your team preferences, what kind of work you're interested in, if you prefer like more backend work, more front-end work, what languages you're proficient in and would like to work on, and so on. So in this stage, this is like the first time where it matters where you actually want to go. So you might see on the portal website, it already shows like, oh, apply for Munich, apply for Zurich, apply for Dublin. But actually, you're applying first for the entire European, Middle East, and Africa region. And only in step 3 will you actually decide on, okay, I prefer to go to this office, or you can also just say, I don't care where I want to go. I just want a nice project. So that's all things that happen in stage 3. And after the questionnaire, you're in this host matching queue, and will eventually get somebody from a team to reach out to you, and you will have an interview with them and basically get to know each other, and both of you can say if you feel comfortable with that project, if that sounds like you're interested in it, if they think that you're a good fit for their project, and if both of those things are true, then you have been assigned to a host and you're now good to go. And if it doesn't work out on the first try, it's also not a problem. You can basically expect to get another team to reach out soon, and that process repeats until you manage to find a host. So yeah, once again, steps 1 and 2 are very important. And another thing to help you get through the step 1, which is admittedly the most arbitrary and random one, is if you know a current Googler already, somebody who works at Google, then go ahead, reach out to them and ask them for a referral, because they can write like on an internal platform, oh, hey, I know this person, I've worked with them, like I think they would be a good fit. And that definitely helps to kind of get your application more visible and make sure it passes through that initial stage. Of course, not all referrals are worth the same. If it's like somebody you just vaguely met once, it's not worth as much as like a very important person at Google who you've closely worked with in the past. But just having a referral at all is already a big win. So if you know somebody, make sure to use that option. Now, let's say you've had your internship. What happens afterwards? At the end of your internship, you get some feedback from your host and from your co-host. And if it was a positive feedback, then basically you're free to do a second internship if you want to. So returning internships are quite straightforward. You don't have to do anything again. You just get an email saying, oh, you've been approved, and you're back into the candidate pool for the next intern season, so for 1 year later. And if you want to convert, that's basically what Google heavily encourages you to do, because that's, of course, the main reason they do the internship program is to kind of get full-timers out of it. So they heavily encourage you to go for conversion after, like, when you're about to finish university. And what you need for a successful conversion is at least 6 feedbacks. So you already have two of them from your interviews in the beginning, and then after your first internship, you get 2 more from your host and from your co-host. So basically, you're now missing 2 additional feedbacks for that conversion process. That means when you do a second internship, you're gonna have enough, or if you don't want to do a second internship, you have to do some more conversion interviews. So that's kind of the standard case. But it also, keep in mind, it also changes from case to case, and depending on how positive or how your feedback went, it might like require extra steps, also depending on what role you're going for. So this is like a very flexible part, but actually you have a very nice contact with your recruiter. You have this person that is assigned to you throughout your internship process, and you can always reach out to them, and they will always be happy to discuss with you any issues you might have and give you more information. So for me, and I think the rest can agree, that's like a very smooth process of communicating with the people who are responsible for you. And usually it's really easy to find out all the information necessary. Yeah, that was it from our side. And now we're ready to take some questions.
Wonderful. Thanks to all of you for this wonderful and insightful presentation. I'm running toward the questions in the meantime, and we do have quite many. So
Okay, I guess there are some internet problems. He's back.
Sorry. So we do have quite some questions, and I think it's a good thing that we planned for quite many and have enough time to answer all of them. So the first question goes probably to all of you. Is there some preparation strategy for future interns? Or do you have any tips on that?
Lead code. Use lead code a lot. That's
besides coding practice, I would also really recommend doing it with people and explaining them what you do. Because like being able to code really well is one part, but then also being able to explain it well is a second part. So that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And also just try to gather as much practical experience as possible. Especially at university, you kind of tend to do only very limited scope projects, and the more you do outside of university, the more kind of open source contributions and other practical experience you have, the easier it will both be for you to have a good CV and be good at the technical interviews. Because yes, knowing like your algorithms and your theory is helpful for the technical interviews, but there's a huge difference of, oh, I can like analyze complexity, and oh, I know how to like break down a problem into smaller bits and approach things from different angles and maybe find some creative solution to things, which are just things you need to do as a programmer and things that you can only learn by experience. So basically, don't forget this part: practice, practice, practice.
Sure. What about behavioral questions? So do you have any tips on that? Or are there any?
There aren't really any. I think they sometimes ask questions about your CV. I was asked one question about the project I put on my CV for like 2 minutes, and that was it. And I didn't have any behavioral, and I didn't hear from anyone who had them. And I think it's unusual. I think for one conversion interview, I heard that somebody had, I think, half of the interview about the CV, but it's mostly only coding, I think.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So,
and maybe one more resource is the book Cracking the Coding Interview, which is a bit more comprehensive than LeetCode. I would recommend going through the book first. I think it's even for other term students. I think it's available in the library, so you can get it there as well if you don't want to pay for it. And then you can go on LeetCode, because LeetCode is community driven, so just people upload their questions. So you have more structure in the book. I highly recommend that as well. And you should also practice coding in Google Docs, because you won't have an editor, you will code in Google Docs. You will be allowed to set the font is in monospace, but it's still different coding Google Docs than
no autocomplete.
Actually, yes. I saw that they just changed it this year because of the virtual situation. I think they now have a virtual interviewing thing. But like, I'm not sure, but I think I saw that yesterday. And then also I wanted to add another thing. We just talked about how to prepare for technical interviews, but of course you have to prepare for the other things as well. So for the CV one, I would recommend, if you have the time and you have the friends to do that, maybe send it to them and see what kind of impression they have. If they only have like 1 minute to see it or something, what gets stuck in their head. Because you really want to make sure that the recruiter who only gets to see this for a limited amount of time actually gets the information that you want them to see. And then for the host matching thing, I don't think I prepared a lot for that, but it's really good if you at least know which team they are in and maybe prepare some questions to like show interest. And if you have relevant projects, prepare them and show that you have some experience relevant to their project as well.
One quick thing to the host matching as well, or the interview at least, there might also be questions from the host to you in that interview. It's not usually the case, but I had like one interview indeed where I was asked questions, and like technical questions as well. So you might have to prepare for your specific role as well. It's not usually the case though.
Okay, cool, thanks. So Flores, you were speaking of something like lead code, and I'm sure you prepared yourself by doing all these tasks. One question was, and this is probably also for all of you, did you study specifically for the interviews or just used your knowledge?
And for me, it was mostly, I didn't really have time because it was quite surprising and I was in the middle of the exam period. But I found it really helpful to revise what I already learned once in like the theoretical informatics course, I think it's called. I just looked at the lecture slides again and kind of refreshed my knowledge. But I do recommend, if you have the time, definitely do practice because it was a little bit of a struggle during the interview. Yeah, it's definitely better if you practice, because just for your nerves, you know, you're not as nervous.
Yeah, I also recommend practicing. I don't remember because too much, honestly, because this is my third internship and my first one has been quite a while ago and I haven't had interviews since then. But yeah, I think so. Like practicing this particular situation is always helpful. But if you have a good prerequisite of, okay, you know how to write code, you've been writing code for a while, like actively, and you're not like out of touch with solving programming related tasks, then you're already pretty well prepared. Like this is a very important component on its own. If you only study your algorithms and all that, then you might run into some issue where you can like apply the schema that you've repeated all the time, and then you need to answer something a little bit out of your comfort zone, and then it might catch you off guard. So, but yeah, always practice.
Yeah, you might want to know what a hash map and like a heap or something is, and if you don't know that, then you should study. Otherwise, just repeat a bit and then what the other said.
Okay, cool. So completely different topic. Do you know if Google helps sponsoring visa for the internship, for example, in the US?
I am not sure. I think I've heard, I'm sure that they will help you get the visa. I'm not sure about sponsoring it. But yeah, you might want to ask your recruiter once you get to that stage, actually. So I think getting the visa shouldn't be the reason why you don't do the internship. I think they will find a way.
Sure.
Well, we haven't worked on the US. I think the main blocker, it shouldn't be a blocker. It should be like a thing to sort out after you get accepted, and then your recruiter will like do everything in their power to help you acquire the visa. I'm also not sure about whether they sponsor it.
There's a difference. So you apply for either EMEA or the US. There are two different applications. And from what I've heard, it's easier to get into EMEA for EMEA people. But I think for your research, it's easier to get to the US directly. But I don't know for sure. But if you do a returning internship, it's usually easier to get the visa and get into the US pool, from what I've heard. I think sponsoring is connected to getting into the US pool. Yes, that's from what I've heard, but no guarantees. Depends on the recruiter and their opinion. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Not sure about that, but what I've heard for the J1 visa that is required for internships in the US, I think you need some company sponsoring it, and I assume Google will do this because otherwise it would not be possible for people outside of the US.
If you get an internship in the US, Google will sponsor it. I'm pretty sure that it's that's guaranteed. I'm pretty sure. Not
Nice. So then one question about money. Are there maybe any cost compensations if you get distributed to an office different from your current home or your location?
You will always get a relocation bonus, which is something that is fixed for all internships. It doesn't actually matter if you actually do relocate or not. You just get it no matter what. So even if you end up staying in the same place, you still get a relocation bonus. So it's kind of a fixed sum of money, but that's like supposed to be used for all these moving efforts.
Did you also get a relocation bonus during remote-only internships?
Yep.
Yes.
Nice.
And maybe regarding the amount of money you get, typically it's enough to cover all the costs for you as an intern to move, and also for the rent for the 3 months. At least it was for me. But it really depends on where you come from, because I know some people who came over from Singapore or something, and then most of the money was just a flight cost. So yeah, your mileage may vary.
Okay. So you mentioned all these napping rooms and all the things you can do during a Google internship. So during the internship, is it possible to nap overnight in the office spaces? So I assume this is someone who wants to save some renting costs. Is it possible to not leave the office spaces for multiple days? Thanks.
Theoretically, yes, it is highly discouraged and you will be kicked out. So no.
Yeah, officially you're not allowed to stay in the office overnight. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So again, sorry, completely different topic. Because I'm just going through the questions in the order they were like with the most upvotes. So sorry that they're a bit jumping between topics. So during your application, did you include a cover letter? Because I think you mentioned that you can include it. And is it recommended to do so?
I don't think I did, and I cannot speak with certainty because I'm not on the hiring committee. But from all the gossip I've heard from pretty much any company, like cover letters are completely ignored 90% of the time. They're just way too much to read at that stage, and basically you have like a few seconds that people spend on your application, and if you're lucky you get like the check mark, and there's no time at all to read like a cover letter. So don't waste too much time on that.
Okay, that's interesting.
But this is
And
not
the same unit.
specific. This is in general for large companies.
Yeah, I think for resume screening it's probably never, or like almost very rarely read. I'm not sure, like, because after your interviews, your CV and application data with your interview feedback is sent to a hiring committee. Not sure if they will look at the cover letter. Maybe it will help you at a later stage, but I don't think it is necessary.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Then again, different topic, sorry. So speaking of research internships, you mentioned that you can apply as a master's student or a PhD student. But the question is, what is the ratio between master students and PhD students in research internships? Or phrased differently, do I have a realistic chance as a master student to get accepted there?
So I've talked to a research. So last year I had a mentor in research. So that's why I asked him exactly the same question. So I don't know the ratio per se, but from the people I know, it's about 50-50. Of course, this is just a very limited scope. But this definitely says that you have a realistic chance as a master's student. Although I will say that the master's research students that I know mostly are quite specific to the project that they do, which means if you do apply for a research internship, they usually search for people who already know quite a lot about this topic, of course. So as long as you do that, I think you do have a really realistic chance. Maybe if you have some papers already, that really helps a lot because it shows that you already have done some research setting.
Okay, cool. And staying with applications, is a German GPA of 1.8, not sure if it's like German GPA 1.8 super good or super bad, not sure, enough to apply or lower than standards? So is this good enough, 1.8? What do you think?
Yeah, it's totally fine. Google doesn't really care about grades. I personally, I don't really care about grades as well. So I have a GPA of 2.8. I think when I applied, I had 2.8. Now it's slightly better, but really not great, right? And I did send them my grades. It's optional, and they didn't care. So it's totally fine. Don't care about grades.
Yeah, so,
At least
so,
for Google, not in general.
yeah, what Google really is looking for in your CV is any indication of, oh, you've done like something outside of university, something that like not that you don't share with every other student. So the grade is like one nice linear scale, but apart from the grade, what companies are in general very interested in is, does this person know how to code? And this is something that is not very reflected in your grade, and this is why it doesn't play as much as a role as you would think for computer science in general, and for Google in particular.
Sure. So do they care about degrees as well? Like, especially when applying for full-time positions, is there a difference between having only a bachelor's degree or a master's degree?
So for the conversion, there's different levels of full-timers that you can be. Most people start at level 3. And level 3, I think, is bachelor's or master's, which means they don't really care too much. They care more about your performance. So I've heard of some exceptional cases where people that only have a bachelor's were really, really, really good at interviews, and then they got placed in L4, and then other people who have their master's got placed in L3 because that's the default. So I wouldn't say it matters too much. I actually just discussed with other people if a bachelor's is even needed. And of course, while most people do have a bachelor's, and I think Google would like it to have, you would like you to have a bachelor's, I know some people who got into Google without having a computer science bachelor's. So it really depends more on what you can show them, like what kind of projects you can show them or what kind of skills you have. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So do you by any chance now know how many bachelor students from TUM are accepted for internships each year?
I mean, I don't know any numbers, but I do know that we know quite a lot of people that go to TUM. So I would guess it's not few. But yeah, no official numbers, of course.
Yeah, from personal anecdotes, more than the four of us.
Okay. So how many have you met from TUM?
There's a lot of edge cases in that question of people who were not at TUM at the time, but who are now at TUM, and the other way around.
True.
I would say something like order of magnitude of like 10 to 15 for me, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe more, 8 to 10, I don't know.
Okay. So do you have specific advices if you want to work on a project or team with a strong focus on natural language processing?
So can you repeat the question?
Do you have any specific advices if you want to work on a project with strong focus on natural language processing?
I mean, of course, it helps if you have done projects before that require these things. Also, in the host matching thing, you are in the questionnaire that Lucas mentioned, you can put in your interest in the team, and it definitely helps if you can put some projects there so that people can see that you have done this and this project so far. Also, you can kind of look up in Google and see what teams work with these topics, and then put these specific teams into the questionnaire as well. Other than that, I think the biggest thing is just like get involved with this topic.
Yeah, I mean, as you might imagine, there's a lot of teams in Google that work with NLP, so I think there's definitely a large pool of projects around that that you have a chance of running into. So in that questionnaire, you just fill out, okay, NLP is something I would really like to work with. And if it's like a really, really strong preference of you, then you can also talk to your recruiter and see what they can do to like maybe make sure that that preference is honored even more strongly. So All of this is definitely doable once you've been accepted and in stage three of the application.
Okay, cool. So I think now we are roughly half through all the questions on Slido. So I would actually give the audience here in Meet the chance to unmute themselves if they want, because like asking questions in person is maybe a bit nicer for our panelists. So I'll just give you like some minutes if you want. Just feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, we have one.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just a person from Mexico, and one of my biggest dreams is to go to Europe and to know about Germany. But I'm quite interested in which the internships in terms of budget or money, if it'll be enough for rent and food. That's my question though.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, my question is if in the internship we will receive kind of money support, and if it's so, it can be enough for me to rent and food.
Yes.
That's my question.
Definitely. Yeah. So your salary depends on the location that you're interning in. So basically you have a contract with Google in one particular country, and depending on that mostly is what your salary is. But overall, your salary will be more than enough to cover all your living costs and your travel costs, and have a lot left over as well.
Thank you so much.
So we have another question. Yeah, sorry.
My name is and I want to ask if you guys know anyone who has completed a business internship.
There are a few people that are in our internship. Maybe we can ask them to get in contact. I'm not sure because I don't know personally, but I can ask them, and maybe you can write us an email, and then we can see if we can get
Okay, I will write you an email about this, and maybe you can give me their name so I can connect with them on LinkedIn, or if they are willing, I can email them too. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll ask them.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Well, I don't know if someone asked it before, but how can be more in contact with you guys? I mean, is there sort of kind of like GitHub or or social media in which we can be in contact, like GDG or something like that?
So do you mean the Googlers here or us as DSC?
No, I mean you guys as a developer student clubs, but I mean to be in contact with you, like an email or something that we could.
Sure. So we have this. Probably you've already found our website where you registered for this event. So this is probably now the main place. We also have a email address. It's what is it? dscmunich@gmail.com or something like that. Oh yeah, Vivi is just posting it in the chat. Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you.
Feel free to shoot us an email. Any more questions?
Yes, maybe one from me.
Nice.
Hi guys, thank you for your time and all the preparation. First of all, I wanted to ask about the quantity and quality of the involvement, which could be helpful to prove your skills or your outside interests outside of university in open source projects. So I know it's hard to estimate and talk on average or in general what would fit, but maybe you can give some impressions about how many lines of code you think could be not expected but
beneficial, or even which kind of open source projects, as their variety differs quite a lot, and it depends highly or strongly on which kind of topic you work, but maybe just some more words about it, that would be quite helpful. Thank you.
I feel like that's quite difficult to answer. As you said, it really depends on, first of all, which stage you are, I guess, because if you're like first year, they're not expecting you to have as many projects. I do know many people who, for example, did like a mini game and posted that on GitHub, or had like an app or something, or wrote a plugin for some language. I think these are the kind of topics that I see. And then also what I see a lot here is that people do competitive coding and like want some reward or something. That's very, very common in the intern community, I guess. Yeah, and then like very classical things, if you work in the company as a working student, that's also quite common. I think anything works. Maybe also for the TU Munich people, there's also like competitive teams at the university where you can like build cars or rockets or whatever, and that's also a really cool thing to share if you want to join these kind of things. Yeah, but really depends on your topic, I think, and what you like.
In terms of open source, one thing I remember from
Sorry, Mario. Yeah.
Is
Sorry, yeah.
that you like what matters is less kind of like how many lines of code did you contribute, but more is there like some measurable amount of success or of impact that you can demonstrate. So Google really loves impact and really loves numbers. So whenever you can write like, oh, so I contributed to this project where that helped like 10,000 users do something, or I did this and it like I contributed to this large project and it like improved the page load time by 20% or whatever. Like anything, any number you can find. Doesn't matter how great it is, as long as a number, it's very good to have. So of course, like it's not very common as a student to already have like super crazy large projects that are used by hundreds of thousands of people, but like this is something that is very beneficial. So if you do open source contributions and you can find any number that says, okay, this sounds impressive, definitely write that in your CV.
Okay, thank you very much again for your feedback.
Just real quick, if you're not into competitive programming, as I am, like I do not enjoy it, it's also very fun in many cases, and also beneficial to do like hackathons and stuff, where you can also open source the code that you wrote, and that will also greatly help you.
Speaking of open source contributions, one question from my side. What about things like Hacktoberfest, where you really like don't have your own personal projects most of the time, but just randomly contribute small things to other projects? Is this also like good or just neutral?
No, it's definitely good. Everything that you do outside of university already shows that you're motivated, and also shows some of your coding skills. And even if it's just small things, it shows that you understood the code base before and you know how to fix things. I think that's already really good as well. So definitely also put that in there.
Nice. Any more questions from the audience right now? Okay, if not, I would just continue with the most highest upvoted questions. So because during the Corona times, you said you received a laptop from Google. Did you get to keep the laptop and monitor? You had to send it back. Okay.
You have to send it back, yes.
You do get a whole range of other cool things though, called the intern swag, but sadly you cannot keep any of the company hardware.
My swag still hasn't arrived.
Okay. In what engineering or research or what engineering and research areas do people work in the Munich office? So probably, Vivi, you know a bunch of stuff about that, I think.
I opened the page. So, and of course, Chrome is really big. They also have this data privacy center at Munich, which is really big. Actually, also Google Access there, but it's quite secretive, so I don't really know much either. They have a lot of site reliability there. They have some design-related things, so UI design, material design. I know from last year's internship, there's also quite a big shopping team, so Google Shopping in Munich. And also they work on Stadia. So there's like a lot of different teams that work there.
There's also a lot of internal teams, like with
Yeah.
internal tooling and stuff. They are mostly in Munich.
Yeah.
Vivi, is this website public or is it Google internal that you're looking at?
I think it's not public.
Okay.
But I mean,
There's also a public summary of like the Munich location on like Google carriers. I think that doesn't have a lot of information, but like some key topics.
And then also typically you can kind of stalk it yourself if you watch out for the job postings. You can see which kind of teams are there. Sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
There's also for Google X, there's robotics in Munich. And then I don't know what exactly. I'm not sure what I can disclose, but there are job listings for robotics. So. And there's also Android Auto, I think.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool, thanks. So I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think you mentioned the STEP program and that it's open for the first and second year of bachelor students, I think. One question was, can we also apply to STEP during our third year of bachelor's? Oh,
I don't think so. Maybe it kind of depends on how your program is like organized in your university, but I think it's mostly for first and second years.
Okay, cool.
I think so too, but I think somebody from the UK was in his third year. Not sure if that is the German second year. And I think it was not computer science, but electrical or mechanical engineering. There could be a difference depending on your study program. So if computer science is not your major, maybe you can apply to STEP on a later stage as well. But don't quote me on that.
Okay, thanks. So again, completely different question regarding the interview process. Do you know by any chance if PhD students have the same interview process, like especially technical interviews?
So what I don't know much about this process, but I do know is that if you're a PhD student, most probably you're applying for research. I'm not sure. And for research, there's definitely another type of interview. I'm not sure what the name is, but I think it's like research interview, where it's mostly about, first of all, getting to know what kind of projects you have done in the past and what kind of impact you have done in these projects. And then also just generally your knowledge about this topic. But yeah, I'm sure, none of us have done a research internship, so I guess we're not the best people to ask this.
Yeah.
And the research is on top, so you also have your technical interviews. So you have at least 3 interviews.
Okay, that's interesting. Nice. So one question to you, Floris, because you were in the security team. Did you attend these security courses and lectures at TUM, and are these kind of mandatory for the internship, or is having experience only in bug bounty programs, etc., also enough to get in?
I don't think they're necessary. Like the courses are not necessary. No, I don't think they're necessary. They're probably helpful as they highlight that you are interested in it. But I think if you can show that you've done like a lot of bug bounty stuff and so on, that you can showcase it enough by itself. So no, but do them anyway. They're fun.
The bug bounty programs or the lectures?
Both.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so I'm working in the security team right now, and while I'm not on the security intern track, I still have contact with a bunch of security people. So in general, it does not matter where you get your knowledge from. So if you have experience with a bug bounty program, if you already know a lot about security and web security and all of that, then like it doesn't matter if there is some paper that says that you have attended a lecture or not. If you don't, then I also very much recommend the security lectures at TUM. They're quite insightful and cover a lot of the basics that you need. And if you don't know what like an XSS or what the SQL injection is, then you should probably attend those lectures. Otherwise, yeah, knowledge is more important than where the knowledge comes from at Google.
Sure.
Do the homework. Fabian has put a lot of effort into those.
Okay. I never did any of these courses, I have to admit. So, sorry. One question regarding the CV. Is it important for your projects in the CV to be open source? Or does it also count if you have like 100K end users, but closed source?
So I gotta say, I don't think I have any open source projects in my CV. Most of them were like part of either work or some competitive teams. I think it's mostly about showing that you have done something, maybe showing some numbers if you can. And then once you are in the interview phase, they might ask you about your project and then you can explain some more. I don't think it's necessary to have them open source. I also doubt that at least the recruiters will have the time to actually look it up. But it's definitely, I mean, if you do have open source projects, definitely you can showcase them, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's very unlikely that anybody will actually like click through your links and scrutinize everything you write in your CV. At least not in the first stage. And so if you have a large project that is not open source, it's still a very nice experience to show. And you will probably still have some link that shows like some description of what that is. And if like you say, okay, this is like me behind that, then that's also, of course, impressive.
Okay, cool. So I think Floris, you mentioned blameless cultures at Google, and like mistakes are like a super common thing. We have 2 questions about mistakes. So how much additional costs do you generate on average, or like do an educated guess on that, by breaking a production pipeline?
It can be a lot. There's like internal stories that were very expensive. I don't think I can tell them here, but yeah, it can be a lot.
Okay. Now I'm a little bit curious, but I think if you maybe you shouldn't share them. And the other question was more about your specific like mistakes, but I currently can't find it anymore. But it was something like, would you be willing to share your personal biggest mistakes you did?
I think one very common mistake for interns is to not ask for help early enough, because the code base is large, as I said, and it's very hard to understand in the beginning. And as an intern, you want to impress the people and you don't want to be like needy all the time. But definitely it helps if you like get stuck for, I don't know, half an hour or something, then just ask someone. It might be resolved in like 2 minutes, instead getting hung up on for 2 days. I know some interns who didn't get a returning offer because they didn't ask for help, and then they got stuck and they didn't finish their project in the end. And that's just something that you can really prevent. So definitely don't be shy, ask questions. And then a second thing is use your time as an intern to reach out to people and to connect to people, get to know really cool teams and learn about them, because that's also really, really nice. I feel like I didn't do that enough last year. So yeah, it's really great to get to know all of these projects.
As for like embarrassing stories that break anything, I don't think I've broken anything major in my time at Google, so nothing really fun there, sorry.
Oh, too bad.
I think my biggest mistake in my very first internship was signing up for the fitness classes too late, because I really my host was giving them, and he always encouraged me to go, and I always was pushing it back, and then I signed up in my last month, and it was really fun, and I really enjoyed it, and then it was already over, and that was definitely
too bad. So coming back to projects on the CV, we were talking about that quite a lot, but how many projects would you suggest to put on a CV? Like, if there's some space left, better put more projects in, or describe 2 to 3 in more detail?
I would describe every project you put there enough so that people understand what the project was and what your impact was. If you still have space after that, you can still list a few more projects. Although I would put the most important ones maybe so that the recruiter sees them first. Yeah, and also like depending on in which stage, if you're like in the master's or PhD, most probably you have more projects, then maybe it might also be okay to have a 2-page CV and put like the projects in more detail. Floris is shaking his head.
I would also disagree, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think it's very much a style question. It's very much a style question. But if you go over 1 page, you have to have like a very, very, very good reason. Like it's not what you're used to, like as a German person, because like our CVs are super long and detailed. But like this kind of CV, it should be like catchable at a glance, everything you need to know. You don't need to like scroll through it, read through like blobs of text to find out what's there. Just have very, very clearly formatted with like enough formatting and highlighting that like you can see really, really quickly what's happening. So when you have space on your 1 page, feel free to like put more projects. But I think it's very much personal preference. Like I don't think you can answer that in general, whether 3 more detailed projects are better than 5 less detailed projects.
So we just had a comment on that. Someone liked, or Mario, I think Mario liked Viviana's CV a lot. So you should check out her LinkedIn profile, apparently. Maybe do you approve this?
I mean, but like, yeah, mine is 2 pages long, so Floris would disagree.
Okay.
But as I said, it's probably also personal preference and also how many relevant projects you really want to show. So yeah, to finish up this question.
All right, nice. So one more question about projects and open source. So you mentioned that open source is usually a good thing to have in a CV, but is it better if it was for Google projects?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not sure though.
Yeah,
probably
I also wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I also don't think so. It's highly relevant, but maybe it like the recruiter, they know technical stuff, but they're probably not too deep into technical stuff. So if the recruiter is more familiar with Google tools or like things Google use, maybe they like it more. But I think it's not really important.
Okay, probably also depends on the recruiter. Maybe. Not sure. So is it possible for you guys and maybe to share your resume?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Do you have it online somewhere, or is it linked on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's on my LinkedIn. So if you search up the names, I guess you can find it there. I'm not sure about the other ones, but for me, it's okay.
Cool. That's like free advertisement for all of you.
I guess I can share mine somewhere, probably.
Mine should be on LinkedIn as well. I think it's the version that I applied with to Google. Not sure. Maybe I refreshed it. Not sure. But it could be the one I applied to Google.
Okay, I will after this meeting, I will upload my CV to this link. It doesn't work yet, but if I don't forget, it will start working at some point.
Nice, very nice. So what should my resume include? If I have a lot of extracurricular activities and not technical, should I mention it, or is it a waste of time? I think you already answered this question a bit, but just a quick recap on that.
Sorry, I didn't listen. What?
Oh, sorry. So, should I mention many extracurricular activities in my CV, or is it a waste of time, like compared to more technical activities?
If you mean extracurricular, as in, I don't know, playing music or playing squash or something.
Maybe.
I guess it depends on how relevant your other things are. If you have many technical things, then I wouldn't force putting this section in. But if you have some space left, I guess it shows a bit of your personality. Although I would say that for recruiters, as we said, it's quite hard to read everything. And this should be the least relevant part on your CV. So don't put too much emphasis on it. Like, don't take away the recruiter's attention if you don't need to.
Sure, yeah. So another question. So how often can you usually reapply for jobs at Google?
As many times as you want.
And also like multiple times for different roles within a few months. Is that also possible?
As far as I know, there is this rule that you have 6 months between a rejection and the reapplication for the same role, but I'm pretty sure you can apply for different roles during that time as well.
Okay.
But I think it also depends if you got interviews or not. I think if you got interviews and failed them or got rejected by them, I think you might have to wait for a year. But it might also be depending on the roles. Yeah, not too sure, but I think that's what I've heard.
Okay. So, super interesting. At least I have to agree with the question with the next question. So, what exactly is the difference between Chromium and Chrome? I think this goes to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, Chromium is open source. Chrome is basically the same. They have some internal source on top of Chromium that is not public. That include also some stuff like API keys for Google services and some. I don't know exactly what it is because I also didn't have access to it since I'm an open source intern. But there isn't like a big difference. But there are some Google related features that are not in Chromium but in Chrome.
Okay, cool. So what other questions do we have? Will the slides be available later on for download?
I guess we can make them available maybe in the YouTube link or in the YouTube description, and maybe also in the event description if no one like Lucas, Flores, and Jonathan don't disagree. Yeah, then we'll
also send them around via email. But
yeah. Maybe that's the easier way. I forgot about that. Yeah, we will make them available.
Okay, and I think like maybe the last question, because it's already quite late now, and I feel like everyone's a bit tired. So last question to all of you: what is your feeling about the work and project experience? What is Google looking for when interviewing possible interns? So that's like two-part question. Maybe we start with the first part. What is your feeling about the work and project experience that you had?
First of all, it's a lot of fun. Like, at least in my experience, it was a lot of fun working on the projects, and especially if you're doing something that people are going to use, it's really rewarding. So yeah, the work in general, don't worry about that. It's probably going to be fun. Yeah, anyone else want to contribute to that part? Otherwise,
sure. So for me, I distinguish the work experience and the internship experience quite strictly. because for me, work is the technical part of the work, of the technical part of the internship, where like you actually write code, you contribute to some project, you work with your team. And this part is like, especially in the beginning, to me, it was like extremely mind-blowing of holy shit, like there's so many different technologies in Google. It's all like such a huge scale. I'm like working on this database that has 10 billion entries, and I'm like running some query on like 5,000 computers at the same time. And now I'm like dragging this together, and all of it like magically works. And you have this gigantic complexity and this like huge systems that are all like magically working together to make this company run at such a large scale. Like this to me was extremely impressive, and still is. But also for me, the internship experience is so much more than just that. So around that, like, unless it's a virtual internship, which is why I'm quite sad this year, but in like normal internships, you have this gigantic community around it. You have so many activities. You have basically this horde of students that are all like moving to a new city and like all making friends with each other. And then like you have such a good feel of friendship and community. And there's always something going on in the evenings. And there's so many opportunities during that time that I'm definitely a huge fan of that overall experience too.
Sounds awesome. So in the second part of the question was, if you could boil it down to a few key facts, what is Google looking for when interviewing possible interns?
Well, they want you to be able to break down a problem and address it step by step, mostly, because the problems are not necessarily simple, but like simplified, and then you later have to reapply those skills to bigger problems, for example. So that's like one huge deal. Another part, I'm not sure how big of a part it is for like intern interviews, is whether you're acceptable to work with, basically. So if you can also communicate your ideas and that you're like at least a somewhat normal person.
Mm-hmm. Anyone
I think
else wants to add to this?
The schooliness interview that Flores mentioned, I think it's usually only for full-timers, but that exists. And they also, on top of problem solving, they want to see your coding ability. So whatever language you choose, you should be fluent in it. And they want to see your code there.
Okay, cool. So I would give the audience here in Meet a last chance to like ask in-person questions. So again, feel free to unmute. If not, then I would like slowly conclude this event. I'm sorry that we didn't go through like all questions on Slido. There are some left. I think we covered most topics at least. But I mean, it's like 1.5 hours now, and everyone is a bit tired. So thanks again to all of you for these insightful answers and the cool presentation. We can try like unmute ourselves and give a small round of applause to them. That's like super nice usually, because otherwise it doesn't really work online. Nice, thanks. So we do have some other upcoming events for you guys. We have one on October 7th. It is Research at Google. It's a speaker night with live Q&A. We have invited a bunch of researchers from Google on UX research, perception, machine learning in health, and compiler research, actually. We will host a panel there, and you can ask them like any questions. They will tell you what they're doing and how it is doing research at Google. And then we have another one on October 21st about quantum computing. We invited Tom O'Brien who is a quantum researcher at Google, and he will give you a short introduction about quantum computing and insights and what he and his team is doing. So make sure to join our events. I hope they're as fun as this one was. And yeah, thank you all for attending. Thank you so much. Gracias from Mexico. Nice. And yes, see you. Bye.